All right, so we're going to go ahead and kick off the luncheon keynote with one of my favorite people that I get to work with, Mr. Bob Breeze, the Deputy CIO of Energy. The title of the presentation is The Transformation of DOE's IT Strategy. Mr. Breeze is the Deputy CIO for the Department of Energy. He provides leadership, establishes policy, and maintains oversight for the IT investments to support the diverse portfolio of programs across more than 30 national laboratories and production facilities. Previously, Mr. Breeze was a Deputy CIO for Information Technology at the National Nuclear Security Administration, where he was responsible for the functional accountability and governance of $1.5 billion of investments in IT at 3 national labs, 4 production plants, the Nevada Test Site, and the NNSA Service Center. And with that, I hand it off to Bob.
All right, well, I will not be quite as exciting as Rocky because I have no videos of cyber cats or anything like that. But I will say that yesterday when the question came out, how many of you have been in your job like less than 6 months or less than a year, whatever? So I didn't raise my hand, okay, so I apologize. Anyhow, and the other thing I want to say I apologize for is I dissed my friends at Q1 because I was supposed to sit at their table, and as I was wandering aimlessly trying to find my table, I thought I'd put my stuff at your table, and either they moved the sign or I can't read. So if it's the latter, we're going to be in a lot of trouble during the presentation. But I guess that's fine because you'll want to read the slides yourselves. But I did get a chance to sit with Jirka Danik and his group again, and that was fun because last year we were on a panel together with Christopher Garcia and had a good time, so it was good to chat with Jirka. So this is really not as much about transforming the energy's IT strategy as it's really about just change in government. And I guess part of this is really that you don't have to think small, and government can move faster than you think it can. But sometimes it's not enjoyable for everybody. But it works out pretty well, I think, once you get everybody excited. So let's see, I was told this might take a couple of clicks before it will actually, there we go. So who are we? We're science, we're energy, we're nuclear security, and we're also environmental cleanup. And in fact, environmental cleanup is more than half of the actual portfolio that occurs under the Undersecretary of Energy. We're a government-owned, contractor-operated entity. 15,000 federal employees and over 100,000 contractors. Everything we do is essentially executed through contractors. In our 85 sites around the country and our presence in foreign countries around the globe, most of those, except for the small federal offices, those are all independent companies that operate those facilities on behalf of the Department of Energy. So when we talk about enterprise IT strategy, I would love for the Department of Energy to look like an enterprise, but it isn't. And it's not going to be. So, you know, in health and human services, you all have some of these same challenges. We have a big challenge. In fact, my youngest son goes to Ohio State, which is really cool because it's the first time I've been associated with a school with a football team. And of course, there's all the issue with Jim Tressel, and you know, Gordon Gee said he was really worried more about Tressel firing him as the university president than he was about whether or not he should fire Jim Tressel for his transgressions. It's kind of the same way in energy. Every day, Mike Lokaitis, my boss, the CIO, who came to us from the state of California with Terry Takai when she went to defense, we're more worried every day that the lab directors will fire us rather than whether you know, we're going to fire them. So anyhow, it's kind of an exciting world to be in. When we arrived in October, in fact, when I got here in December last year, I'd been on the job for about 6 weeks. It seemed like 6 months. But and I was still in an acting capacity. I was asked to come over to help Mike transition from state government to federal government. And kind of if you looked at the Situation Room at the time, it really was a legacy environment on the federal side focused on compliance. We got to get the next report and we got to get it done on time, and we got to make sure that all the fonts are correct and that we didn't exceed 3 pages and all this other stuff. And for those, and Denise Hill, who's here from my team, when I was on the NNSA side, one of the bureaus, I know they complained about me because I told them I didn't care about compliance. So I'm kind of part of the Paul Tibbets family here. Okay, is I would say that good management will deliver compliance. Okay, there aren't really bad principles in all of the compliance requirements, but if all you do is focus on getting that piece of paper delivered, you won't really deliver anything of value other than paper. So the situation was really, we had a lot of senior people that was almost kind of like having 30 years of one-year experience. I mean, every year was an incremental improvement of the last year, and we had kind of lost that strategic vision of what do we want to be when we grow up. And so the secretary, when he came in, wanted some big changes in the IT and cybersecurity environment. He wanted to get out of this and move more towards mission-focused, risk-managed cybersecurity, and he actually brought in an advisor to assist the CIO in his role. So, you know, that didn't kind of really fit too well. And there have been a lot of leadership gaps. In fact, the CIO retired, Tom Pike, after a 50-year federal career, retired. Carl Staten, as the deputy CIO, retired. People moved around. Kevin Cook went to Housing and Urban Development. Bill Hunneman, our CISO at the time, moved on to the Office of Electricity Delivery to help with Smart Grid. And there were a lot of vacancies. And so Mike and I came into that type of environment. And we really didn't have the staff skills that we wanted for a real 21st century enterprise. So I'm going to kind of just jump forward because there's really, you know, it's great to say, well, Mike and I rode in on our white horses, and we're still trying to figure out who has the black hat and the white hat. But, we got a lot done and we got a lot of energy, and I think it was just good to have some change. And so what we did is we put together a 45-day assessment. And when we were here in early December, we were, literally days. We're going through the last of the slides on that assessment. And so we delivered that to the Deputy Secretary, to the Undersecretaries, and to the Secretary of Energy. It kind of said, here's what we've seen in the first month and a half that we've been on board, and here are some ideas of where we think we can make some significant improvements in how we deliver or help energy deliver the mission through information technology in a manner that's secure but consistent with the mission of the Undersecretaries. A big part of that was sitting down in the interagency community to find out how you all had done things in your own world. And then we sat and then we created some focus points that we'll go through here. But the key part, and this has been kind of a theme of Mike's, has been partnerships. And I'll talk a little bit more about that specifically. So the first thing was we wanted to transform the strategy so that we were really enabling the mission. It's not about the boxes and wires, and that was really it. We're going to break free of this boxes and wires mentality of the past. Okay? And the program offices, the staff offices, the labs, they're not just our customers, because most of them don't buy or get any service from my office. We provision about 8,000 desktops of those 15,000 federal employees, and we provision none of the services for the labs and plants. Okay? They provision their own. So whether or not they get service from us, they are our partners, because we can't succeed as an enterprise, the Department of Energy, without them. And then we need to do this in a way that promotes the appropriate level of flexibility. We have labs like Berkeley National Laboratory out in the San Francisco Bay Area that operates user facilities that the premise of you coming on as a principal investigator to use one of those is that you publish the work that you accomplish while you're at the laboratory. If your response in wanting to get time on the advanced light source or at the nurse computing facility is, well, I'm going to have to go back to my university and figure out whether or not what we can publish and what we can't, and there might be a patent issue here, is the bottom line is you don't get time on the facility. I mean, it's broad open science. We're moving, as I mentioned to some folks, we're moving petabyte files back and forth between the CERN. Okay? And so there are some security things that just don't work in that environment, so we have to be flexible. On the flip side, we're also responsible for the safety, security, and reliability of the nuclear weapons stockpile, completely on the opposite side of the spectrum. We've got whatever intelligence agency you want to get connected to or the Department of Defense, we have systems that are equally as secure. So our new plan forward in cybersecurity had to recognize that. And so risk management became a big deal. Let's see if we can, okay. So some of the things that, and we'll hit on most of these, I don't have a slide for every one of these, but we'll kind of hit on all these things that we felt were elements of our transformation as an office of the CIO. The first was establishing some vision and some strategy. And so this is our new vision statement. I don't even know what the other one was. Denise, do you remember what the old vision statement was? See, it wasn't even any good. I shouldn't say that. But anyhow, we want to be the recognized partner that brings together technology and information, okay, that unleashes that to achieve the DOE mission. And I'm going to keep moving so John can't take my picture. And so we created 10 focus points. And underneath each of these 10 focus points, and you can read them, they start with high-performing organization and end with partnerships. They're bookended there. But underneath each of these are 3 or 4 specific things that we wanted to accomplish. And we used this type of process when I was in NNSA. So if anybody wants to know if I'm successful at the end of the year, that's my performance plan. And my direct reports have pieces of that make up their roles and responsibilities, and then it's expanded with a little more granularity for each of them. And so collectively, as a management team, we've all committed, and our performance will be graded on whether or not we achieve these things. So that's how committed we are to this path forward. But you can't do it without teamwork. And so on that previous slide, a couple slides, it says strong team but stronger teamwork. No matter, you'll never be 1,000 people that are all perfect employees. But the good news is you'll never be a team of people who are always, your weakest employees. But together, each of you brings something to the table that you can leverage. And I think that's what we're hoping that our employees are starting to find, is that every one of them, regardless of what they thought they brought to the table before, have something to contribute to our transformation vision. So some of the things that we did here was we restructured the IT services organization. We actually had an A76, for those of you who remember the A76 process, and so we had created a most efficient organization that was delivering IT services for the feds. That got dissolved a year before Mike and I got there. Yet the entire organization was still there. The only thing that changed was we got rid of that piece that delivered those compliance reports every quarter that said this is how much money we saved the government. Other than that, the entire organization was the same, other than the normal transition of people. So we reoriented that to focus on 3 things. The first was the customer, the people that do buy our products and services, to make sure that they were our number one focus. The second was to bring together the things that plan, build, and run your infrastructure in that ops section. And then the third thing was a business-focused organization that had business strategy, contracting strategy, as well as resource management, whether it was people or dollars. We created the position of a chief technology officer, and we put that in the front office. We moved the chief architect to the front office. We created the position of a chief operating officer because Mike and I are engaged in a lot of things that the CIO's office hasn't been engaged in before. We spend more time in our program and staff offices around the building than we do in our own office. And so what we didn't want to do was abandon all the responsibilities we had in our own office, and so we brought in a chief operating officer. We also created the position of a communications director. We found out, and this is where, when you start looking down deep in your organization, we found someone who had just completed her degree in public policy and intergovernmental affairs up at Hopkins. We pulled her up, made her the comms director, so we have a consistent message that flows within our organization and outside of our organization. We got our arms around the IT projects. We put that under one person, so all these things that are spread all the way across the department that we don't have all the resources for. And so we've talked about, somebody mentioned, I think it was Paul, said, if you don't have an integrated project team, you don't have a project. Okay? So this forces that integrated project team approach. And so you can read some of those other things about realignments of people as well. With partnerships, Mike spent probably the first 2 months of his time on board wearing the leather out on his shoes, meeting with every assistant secretary, every undersecretary, every program office director, getting out to meet all the other agency CIOs, and over to the White House to meet the folks at OMB and on the national security staff, leveraging his contacts in private industry. We got some key partnerships with the Office of Electricity Delivery and with our intelligence community, and with back in my old place of the National Nuclear Security Administration on cybersecurity as we pushed the risk management piece forward. And so we tried to create those key partnerships early because we wanted to lean on those people as we move forward on some of these ideas. The next was innovation. We had started to kind of stagnate, and although we had an office of technology evaluation and deployment, they really weren't very effective because it was just, you know, two guys in a truck trying to see what they could get done with no budget, no process, or anything else. And so by creating the position of the CTO, we kind of created a balance of the tactical evaluation and deployment, whether it's a program office that says, can I get something for e-discovery in my loan programs office because I'm under a lot of pressure from GAO and from the Hill? Or is it something else we're just trying to deploy an incremental improvement? And that counterbalances with the CTO position, which is really more about creating the strategic partnerships and moving the big boulders of what are the most challenging business problems in the Department of Energy at the headquarters level and bringing together the right technical resources to make it happen. And then there's some other things. Star metrics is, if you're not familiar with star metrics, I think there's a real opportunity here. Star metrics is science and technology for America's reinvestment, and it's working with the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, Office of Science Technology Policy, to look at ways to track the impact of government-funded research and development on the economy. And so how do you turn that principal investigator into multiple jobs, into patents and licenses, and follow on products and services and the economic impact that that investment makes? On cybersecurity, we were always a compliance-focused cybersecurity office. We had a cybersecurity policy that was about 200 pages thick, and we had very cleanly re-articulated every word out of 800-53 and audited it to make sure that we had just perfectly copied it, just like a kid copying the dictionary in the third grade. Okay? The problem was we created a great list of controls, but we had really created lousy cybersecurity. Not to say that our cybersecurity was bad, but from a perspective of balance and managing risk, it wasn't very good. And so now we've pushed the authorities down into the line management, our undersecretaries, which is where all of our labs and plants report to. They don't report to me. Okay? I don't own their budget. I don't own their contract. I don't own their performance plans or anything. So we looked to those undersecretaries and we said, here's the process by which we intend to manage, we want cybersecurity to be managed and how we want you to assess risk. And so we've delivered that to them, and we created an Information Management Governance Council, which consists of the 3 undersecretaries and the CIO reporting to the Deputy Secretary, and that's where the big decisions get made when they can't be resolved to the satisfaction of us as a CIO or to one of those undersecretaries. And so we've got that new policy issued now, and now we're in the implementation phase, and of course the devil's in the details, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but I think it's an exciting opportunity. We're also looking at ways we have great cybersecurity research and development in our national laboratories. We have lousy transition programs that put that stuff to our own use. We have tens of thousands of projects that we do for the intelligence community, for Defense Department, for Homeland Security, and probably some of the civilian agencies as well. And it's just not often enough that the good ideas get transitioned into our own operating environment. And so we're creating some structure around that research and development process, not to change the way that we govern getting work in and out of the labs, but changing the way that we share intellectual property. Federal initiatives. So, although I said I don't really care about compliance for compliance sake, Vivek and his team have put forward some really great ideas. And so we're pushing very hard on this stuff. Mike co-chairs the Best Practices Committee for Vivek, along with Terry Takai and along with Chris Smith of Agriculture. And so they're looking at a lot of different things, and probably 2 of the things that don't come to mind right away is that with Mike's former position as a state CIO and as a chief deputy CIO at the state of California, is what he saw was a lot of challenges in the way that the grants process and the citizen services are delivered from the federal agencies out to the states. And in fact, there are laws and circulars in place that require those monetary streams to be separated, and it literally forces states to stand up multiple duplicative infrastructures in order to make sure we don't spend HHS money in the same place we're spending HUD money or DOE money or anywhere else. And it just doesn't make sense. And so you may have seen that this committee was tasked following the meeting with Vivek and the state CIOs during the NASCIO visit this month, I guess. And so we're going to start looking at ways to streamline that delivery so that we can start to eliminate some of that duplication. The other thing is that all the agencies have been tasked to do tech stats. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing, and in energy for sure, and we've talked to Vivek about this, is that while it's good to look at big, hard, complex projects and figure out why they're not doing well and then cancel them and make a big show of it, or restructure them and make a big show of it, is there are also things that you're trying to do as an agency that there's little pieces around. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing is that because of commodity computing on the federal side, we only provision, well, I mean, in the 8,000 I have, that includes support contractors too. So it's really probably only about 25% of it. But looking at all those other sources of commodity computing and tech statting commodity computing as an entity rather than tech statting, the way I'm doing one particular project. And so we're looking at innovative ways to leverage the 25-point plan. And some have said that you need your deputy secretary engaged. Ours is very engaged. He's engaged in the cloud discussions. He's participated in forums with Jeff Zients and others. And so our DepSec is well on board with this stuff. On IT services, so that's my new symbol over there. It's called Cloud with Caution. Okay? And that's kind of our mantra. We'd love to go to the cloud, but we're going to do it with some level of caution. Because not all of us are convinced we can put our data out there yet. And I know there are those of you here that will convince me that we can, but we're still a little nervous about it. But we know that that's the right way to go, is to push some of this stuff into the cloud. We are looking at ways to restructure the way we deliver services out of the old organic infrastructure piece to mash up infrastructure, platform, software, data, security, and all those things as services. And we have the Chief Operating Officer leading a Tiger team to completely redo that. And we're looking at hopefully having a plan together by the end of this fiscal year. On business management, this is kind of, it's kind of close to the last in the slide deck. But we've been doing incremental budgeting for years. Well, my background is defense, and so I've been part of the PPBES program for a long, long time. NNSA, when it was stood up in 2000, adopted that as part of their way of doing planning and budgeting. And so when I came over to this office, I said, it makes no sense in an organization that is always worried about system development life cycles that we're doing system development life cycles, but we're going to budget them 1 year at a time, and we're going to base it on whatever we spent last year. So last year, before I got there, they did their first attempt at zero-based budgeting, and this year was our first attempt to do multi-year program planning. It's far from perfect, okay, but we're making inroads. And we've held detailed budget and program reviews with me and my internal CFO or my director for corporate management. So we're starting to get that type of visibility. So I started trying to document a few things that we got done in 6 months, and actually I was kind of impressed. We've gotten a lot done. And I think that's kind of the takeaway is that, you can think big thoughts, you can push your people really hard, they will be responsive. I mean, they're very capable. It's amazing what they're capable of if you push them and give them a place to go. And so not all of these are complete as complete as we'd like them to be. But they're all pretty much complete, and I think that it's a pretty good record for 6 months. As I've told, yes, ma'am. As I told Mike, I said, we got to get this going because in 6 months we're part of the problem, and so we're now part of the problem, and so it's time to reassess ourselves, get re-energized, and say, hey, it's just like the first 45 days all over again. Okay, we got this done, but for those of you that are in business development, your vice presidents and executive vice presidents don't care what you got done last quarter. What are you going to get done for me this quarter? Okay? It's the same deal. When you have a Nobel Prize winning physicist for a secretary, you're not going to rest on your laurels, and you're particularly not going to rest on his. Okay? So we got to keep going. The bottom line is that I think our employees, for the most part, are much more engaged and excited. Our slogan, we now have a slogan. It's called Vision, Leadership, and Commitment. Enabling the future through technology and information. Without vision, you don't know where you're going. Without leadership, you have no one to help you get there. And without the commitment of everybody, from Mike, me, the Chief Operating Officer, the architect, the CTO, and every employee and every direct support service contractor we have working for us, we're not going to get there. And the bottom line is it's really about enabling the future. It's not about reliving the past or thinking about how we're going to go change out a server or something like that. It's really about the DOE mission: science, energy, nuclear security, and cleaning up the legacy environmental challenges that we've left behind as a result of the Cold War. So that's kind of the pitch, and there's my email. I made it really small, so hopefully you couldn't see it and email me. So Jaden's not in here, is she? I was going to embarrass her. So Peter's going to get her? I don't know. But so anyhow, so Parham is really great. His folks stay on me about, when am I going to commit to coming? When am I going to turn my slides in? And as I reminded him, I'll never turn my slides in until the last minute because I want to make sure that they're responsive to the discussions that we have going on. So I think it's been great. I love coming here to spend time with you guys. And I know I don't get to see all of you all, but thank you very much. I'll take any questions as long as they let me. I guess we have 2 minutes. None? Good. All right.